Can you share yet?
No, it's just point.
Okay, so we're having a minor technical issue. We do have a presentation that's on Mr. Humphrey's computer and he can't seem to get it to share. So if you guys want to go ahead and start, and in the meantime, he will start from there. If you want to step up to the microphone.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor, Council, professionals, members of the public. My name is Andrew McNally. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for Elizabethtown Gas, located at 520 Green Road.
Hang on one second, Mike, you need to take attendance. Sorry, I'm throwing a whole bunch of stuff at you as we try to get you connected.
Okay, Councilwoman Hand.
Hi, here.
Councilman Johnston. Councilman Long. Here. Councilman Parker. Here. Councilwoman Rossetti.
Here.
And Councilwoman Tilley.
Here. Okay, now the floor is yours. Sorry for the delay.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Andrew McNally. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for Elizabethtown Gas. I want to thank you for having us here tonight to explain some of the work that we're going to be doing here in the borough of Flemington. I intend to be brief, but please fire away with any questions that you might have. And to assist me in that endeavor, I have a number of professionals from Elizabethtown, from the construction, engineering, operations disciplines, as well as a representative of our lead contractor, Skoda. On the first slide, you'll see a brief description
You don't have the slides.
Essentially what we're doing here is a system-wide pipe replacement and improvement plan. This is similar to work that we're doing all over the service territory, and indeed other gas companies throughout the state are doing similar work. We're installing new gas mains made of modern, durable plastic and retiring existing aging mains that are in the borough. We're also installing brand new service lines extending from the new mains to deliver gas into homes and businesses. There are about 160 service lines that we're doing and 9,200 feet of main. Finally, we're relocating certain gas meters where we can from the inside of buildings to the outside of buildings. That provides a greater access for our professionals to get at those meters in case we need to without disrupting the client's residence or business. The work that we're talking about will enhance system reliability and safety, and we're seeking to kick off this project on or about September 6th. There's a number of streets where we'll be working. By no means these are the entirety of those streets, but they include North Main Street, Catner Street, Port Street, Mine Street, Culver Road, Bloomfield Avenue, William Street, Spring Street, Broad Street, Chrysler Place, and Maple Avenue. So in order to install new gas main, what we do is we dig a trench, install the new gas main, and then as we complete a day's work, we cover over that trench with a patch. By the end of the day, before we leave the street, it becomes drivable again. Eventually, what we'll do is do final restoration, i.e. paving, so that the street looks as good or better than where we found it. I'll get into the timeline on that a little bit. As I mentioned, we're going to start with the main, and we're going to start installing that on or about September 6th. And we expect to be able to complete that gas main work on or around October 17th. Once the gas main work is complete, we can begin installing the new 160 service lines. These are the lines that take the gas from the main to the homes or businesses. That work will be completed on or around January 9th, 2023. Again, we patch as we go so that the roads are completely drivable by the time we leave the site. There are no gaping holes in the road for days on end or anything like that. After we do the main and service line installation, we do final roadway restoration, which means new asphalt replacing all the temporary patching work. Unfortunately, we can't do this in the winter time because if you do that, you're going to have cracking, potholes, all that kind of stuff. We also need to allow time for the new main and service lines to settle in the ground. So we expect that beginning in the spring, we will begin doing all of that paving work in town. Of course, we seek to minimize the disruption that's caused by this, and we seek to move as quickly as possible. We're also careful that we don't want to unreasonably interfere with any events that you have going on in town. So I was looking at your website earlier today. I know that there are Halloween events coming up, for example, that would coincide with when this work would be doing in communication with your DPW, with your administrator. We will seek to work elsewhere than in those locations where any events that you may be having are going on. I will provide you with my contact information. You can call me with any inquiries from residents or otherwise. And we also provide residents with a slew of information. Anybody within 200 feet of where we're going to be doing work will be notified by mail of the work that we're doing. If we have to access the customer's premises, we contact them by phone or leave a door hanger or something like that in order to make contact so we can get our people in and out of there as quickly as possible. Again, I would invite you to contact me directly at any time if you wish to talk about this. I know that some of our professionals will be speaking to your professional pre-construction meeting to map out some of the particulars of this. But we look to be in and out of your town as quickly as possible, and we're certainly privileged to serve the customers here, so thank you.
Will customers have any interruption to their gas service?
No, what we do is we keep, maybe some minor for a couple of hours or something like that, but we keep customers on the old main until the new main is up and running. And then it is intended to be seamless so that there's no meaningful interruption to their service.
So where there is even a minor interruption, then if somebody has pilot lights, like they have an older gas water heater, furnace, what have you, you'll come back in and
Absolutely,
reignite those pilot lights.
absolutely. Ed, we do that, right?
Yes, we were, as we left.
Okay.
It was part of when we got there, it'll be part of when we.
I know when residents get gas lines installed in their house, the roads are closed. Do you expect as you're doing this, will traffic still be able to be maintained in one direction or with a flagger?
Yes, we will arrange for a traffic control plan with your professionals and get into the details of that at this pre-construction meeting that we anticipate before we start putting any space in the ground. Again, by the time we're done for the day, those roads will be drivable now.
Okay.
So I'm looking at Spring Street and Chorister Place in particular. You had mentioned Halloween and us having events. We have a project happening over Spring Street and Chorister.
Okay.
We have a police station and Bloomfield, yeah. So are you gonna be coordinating with the developer there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I don't know if we made contact with the developer yet, but certainly we don't want to get in the way of anything that they're doing. We don't want them getting in the way of anything we're doing. So coordinating all that is part of all the magic that these good folks do back here.
Okay. Nice.
I have a question on Port Street.
Yeah.
Is that going to affect the intermediate school at all?
Port Street and the intermediate school.
I know, I understand from this map that Port Street is gonna be from Main to Park only, but is it gonna affect anybody else on that Port Street main?
Let me ask my construction expert on that. You know anything about the port?
And if you could come up to the microphone, please.
Sure.
Yeah, we could talk about reconstruction with Mike Campion about that and then see how we get traffic in and out. I mean, with schools and places like that, we can always operate around it and work around getting buses in and out and everything like that.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
So you'll have questions, especially once work starts. Please don't hesitate to contact me.
Got it. And if residents have questions and they reach out to a member of the elected body or they reach out to Mike or Mike Humphrey or Mike Campion, they'll reach out to you as well.
Yes.
Okay,
We also have a hotline set up that all affected residents will get the number for, through the mail on those door hangers that I was talking about. But in addition to that, you can refer any residents who contact you to contact me.
So do you guys have something called frequently asked questions? Because my concern would be is that somebody's asking you a question and the other person may have the same question, but they have to call you as well. So is there some way that you can do to ask questions?
Yes, we actually have that prepared already. I will send that over to the administrator, make sure that they have it. And it's a one-pager fact sheet that, you know, basically gets into the frequently asked questions, covers much of the information I just gave now.
Can you provide us your phone number and email for the record?
Yes, it is A McNally at sjindustries.com, and my cell phone is 609-833-1298.
so on the streets that you're doing, are these like the old gas mains in town? Do you foresee additional work in the future other than these streets?
Not at this time, but these mains are about 50 years old. And the new mains that we're putting in, we anticipate they'll be there longer than any of us.
And so the other streets that are not included will not be, they're not scheduled to be done, like you won't be back here in a year from now.
We don't have plans to work on those other streets, and if and when we develop set plans, we will of course let you know well ahead of time.
Yeah.
All right.
Any questions from members of the public? Mr. Mann?
I don't live here, but I have a business here in the borough, and I do use your gas.
Could you, Ed, could you just identify yourself, please, for the record?
My name is Ed Mon, M-A-H-N, and I live in Raritan Township. But I have a business on Church Street, and that's not why I'm making a comment. You say you make your roads perfectly passable once you're done with them, but when you go in Raritan Township and you go up Thatcher's Hill, you had to run a gas line. Someone had run a gas line to Altamont Place, and it had been a pristine road going up Thatcher's Hill. And now you know exactly where the gas company was. No follow-up or nothing. You just bump your way over that bump.
And how long has that bump been?
Year.
Okay.
There was no follow-up. And I'm just making a comment where you say that you do come in, you do make the road passable. It's passable, but you know that the gas company was there. Be aware of
Well, we
that.
try to make it as level as possible in that temporary patch, and then eventually you're gonna have a paved street that's not gonna have that issue. I can't speak to that.
So will you, and I also have a business in the borough, so will you at that point have a crew come back and follow up for the patches that you do make that are necessary when you do the replacement of any mains where you have to dig into the street?
Yeah, our crews are gonna be here for.
But we have a follow-up in the future. Do they have to be on your case and say, you gotta come back because this is sinking or this is bumpy? The town's gonna be improved quite a bit in the upcoming future, very near future. And we have enough issues anyhow, so they have roads that might be bumpy or otherwise questionably passable, like, oh, you know, unless this is. It would be good if you have a plan that would have a follow-up, maybe 2 or 3 months after the pipes or what it might have settled, roadway has settled, and that way you can make the roads not only look passable, but be passable and people aren't bumping their way through. That's my comment.
We will take care to keep an eye on the settlement of those things. And if there's any issue like that, we will come back and fix it, even prior to the eventual full restoration.
Yeah, and you can drive with Thatcher's Hill, and you know exactly, if you've been up the hill, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, thank you very much, appreciate it, thank you.
And a lot of this work is to account for, you know, some of the projects that are going on in town so that our company can meet those needs for those new customers.
Any other questions? Thank you for coming in. I
Thank you, Mayor.
appreciate it. I appreciate you coming in. We'll put this up on social media and the website. Since we weren't able to.
Yes.
Technical issues.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for coming in.
Thank you.
We will go into recess for 10 minutes. until 7:30. I will pause the report. Good evening. It is 7:30. Today is August 22nd, 2022. This is the regular meeting of the Mayor and Common Council Borough of Flemington. This meeting is being held in conformance with the Public Meetings Act, called pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Law. This meeting of August 22nd, 2022 was included in the list of meetings notice sent to the Huntington County Democrat and Courier News on January 5th, 2022, posted on the bulletin board at Borough Hall on that date, and has remained continuously posted as required. In addition, a copy of this notice is and has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the Borough Clerk. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call the roll.
Ms. Hand,
Here.
Mr. Johnston. Here. Mr. Long,
Here.
Mr. Parker,
Here.
Ms. Rosetti.
Here.
Ms. Tilly.
Here.
Mayor Driver.
Here. Thank you. I have a very short report this evening that got a little bit longer when I walked in and picked up my mail. I received a lovely letter and package in the mail from Linda Dietz Prince Kendrick. And she writes, Mayor Driver, my great grandfather Hiram E. Dietz was once a prominent citizen in Flemington. In going through some old papers, I found this folder of Flemington photos. If you have no interest in them, please discard. That's not going to happen, but I am sending in hopes someone might have some interest in looking at them, and I will share them. I will leave them with Mike, and then we will find a proper home for them. There's a lot of photos, postcards of the Fleming House, then called the Fleming Castle, as well as some old stationery and some old envelopes that people would send notes to their neighbors in. It's all very, very cool. And I thank Ms. Kendrick for sending those along, and we will send her a thank you. And we'll find souvenir stationery, and we'll find a home for them. And of course, for those of you who know, the Hiram Dietz building is the building next to the library. The story is that the library was, when it was constructed a bit set back from Main Street because Mr. Dietz wanted to sit in his office and look down Main Street. Of course, that's a beautiful view and remains a beautiful view. So thank you to Ms. Kendrick for sending those along. I do have, last week, I had the opportunity to go, 2 weeks ago, excuse me, coming up to celebrate local business owner, 50 years in business, Ed Mon. His daughter Sharon invited me to a little gathering, and I was honored to attend. 50 years ago, Mr. Mon graduated from, I guess, insurance school, for lack of a better word. And so we have a proclamation for you. Come on, Sharon. You too. I'll have somebody else take that
I
photo.
know where I am already. So.
That's okay. Whereas it is the intention of the Mayor and Council of Flemington Borough to bring attention to citizens who have made positive and enduring impact. And whereas Edward Mom, a business owner of State Farm Insurance at 31 Church Street in the borough of Flemington, where he has served the greater Flemington community for more than 50 years. And whereas was married to his wife of 41 years, Janice Mon, father to his beautiful daughters, Sharon, Susan, and Amy. Sharon joins us tonight, and grandfather to Evan and Ava. And whereas Mr. Mon worked 3 jobs to earn his business degree from Wagner College before serving in the United States Army at Fort Dix during the Vietnam War. Thank you for your service. And whereas Mr. Mon has served in several community leadership roles as an active member of St. Paul's Lutheran Church, and it was a pleasure meeting the Reverend from the church at the event. And whereas Mr. Mon has given back to so many charities and not-for-profit groups in the state, including Operation Jersey Cares, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, St. Jude's Hospital, the Elks Club, the O.J. Anderson Scholarship Fund, and so many more in and out of the state of New Jersey. And whereas Mr. Mon was awarded the NJ Biz Icon Award for 2022, congratulations, following in the footsteps of his daughter Sharon, who won in 2018. Whereas Mr. Mon is known for his funny personality, very funny, I can vouch for that, his smart wit and his humble demeanor, making him a friend to everyone he meets. Therefore, under the power vested in the office of the mayor of the borough of Flemington, I, Mayor Betsy Driver, do hereby declare on August 22nd, 2022, that Edward Mon is an outstanding and honorable citizen of our borough. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Not us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming. Let's start up with our folks who are remote this evening. We'll start with council reports from Elizabeth Rossetti.
Thank you, Mayor. Short and sweet today. In terms of code enforcement, I just wanted to let everyone know that Dave Giuliani is out of the office starting today through next Monday. He will address anything that he receives an email as soon as he gets back. And in the meantime, if there is anything urgent, please see Jeff Klein. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up will be councilperson Jess Hand.
Thank you, Mayor. So I had reported, I guess, about a month ago, the community garden fence was supposed to go up this week. That is not happening. We are working through some money issues. We are working on getting an official bank account and then can raise money for the materials. So stay tuned for that. I attended the Corn, Beer, and Tomato Festival last weekend. It was a wonderful event, lots of people, which is great. Kudos to the FCP and all the volunteers. And that is it for me.
Okay, good enough. We'll then go on to Councilman Malik Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Pretty short and sweet for me as well. The library is business as usual. I just want to give a shout out to Debbie Moore, the children's librarian. She does the summer children's reading program, which just ended on the 19th, but was a huge success. Each month at the end of the month, a new art gallery goes up on the walls of our library. This month, our very own George Sanchez artwork is being displayed. If you get a minute, please stop and folks. Lastly, there's new flowers being planted by DPW under the gardening grill, and the Boy Scout Troop number 62. That's all.
Okay, next up is Councilman Tony Parker.
Yep, I don't really have anything this week, but I will say that the Corn and Tomato Festival was amazing. It's just amazing. I'm just really happy to see that. And actually, I guess from out of the state, and they were like really blown away by it. So good job.
Okay, next up is Council President Jeremy Long.
Good evening, folks. Police news. Unfortunately, we've had a slight uptick in overdoses recently. There have been 2 in the past couple of weeks. There was a cell phone stolen from an individual while at her workplace, the Chick-fil-A. She left her phone on the table as she was working, and a few males decided to come in and take the phone and walk off with it. As always, if you see something, say something, call the police if you see or feel there's something suspicious at the non-emergency number 908-782-3432. Flemington Community Partnership News, as you may have heard, and I'm happy to report, the 5th annual Corn, Tomato, and Beer Festival was a resounding success. We had gorgeous weather, saw approximately 10 to 15,000 people at the event. The FCP has surveyed their vendors, and the majority have said that the day far exceeded their expectations financially and in terms of ease of operations. The FCP, spent more money on staffing for the event than in past years, and had a good number of volunteers, but it's still a large one-day undertaking for such a small group of people. The FCP wishes to thank our Flemington Mayor and Council our liaison, well, that's me, our clerks, Graziano and Humphrey, the Borough Hall staff, the police, the DPW, OEM, the EMTs, and the fire department personnel who all helped to make this great day possible. Last, we will have reports at the next meeting regarding the fundraising that the fire department was able to achieve at this incredible event, and more reports about the FCP's event expenses. While this is an extremely costly event to produce, the amount of press, growing attendance, local business participation, customers for everyone, and positive experiences associated with the borough and our businesses all come back to Flemington Borough in invaluable ways. Next up is the Central Jersey Jazz Festival at Stangl. That's on Friday, September 9th, and the Hunterdon Harvest Fest upcoming on October 1st. Also, the FCP is launching the Npp Residential Grant by the end of the week. So I'll clarify what this is. This grant is $1,000 to owner-operated residences to purchase materials such as paint or mortar or other items for facade improvements. The FCP has 15 grants for residents to do improvement work in the South End this year. The work must be completed in September or October. The FCP will put info in every door and have it available on the FCP and Borough website. It's a short form to apply. And finally, Civic Engagement. It appears that we've hit a bit of an organizational snag in the planning for our September Civic Engagement presentation and volunteer opportunity. So we're going to push this into October. Again, this is going to be a large gathering to show Flemington residents how and in what ways they can get more involved in the community and for potential leadership opportunities. And that is my report.
Okay. Giving cleanup duty as she often does is Council Person.
Alrighty, on the 9th, we had a DPW meeting. There was information received regarding to conserve water voluntarily. We are not under a mandatory conservation yet, but I'm sure it's pending if we don't get much rain soon. We also discussed that we are pending the concrete mix to finish Dewey Avenue. That needs to be approved first. And we had a crosswalk repainted on East Main in New Jersey right before school started. On the 9th, I had fire department meeting. Big thing that came out of that is on the September 7th, they'll be testing the hoses and ladders. The 10th, we had the Hopewell Ave construction meeting. The 17th was an HPC meeting. We heard 2 applications at 23 Maple Ave. Exterior work and paint color change that was approved as presented. The second application was 2729 Park Avenue. That was exterior and porch work that was approved with a couple of recommendations. On the 18th, there was a fire meeting with the, well, not really a fire meeting, but I had a meeting with the chief and the deputy chief to explore some volunteer recruitment. And like everybody has mentioned, on the 13th was the Corn, Tomato, and Beer Fest. I personally want to thank the FCP, mayor and council, our police department, OEM, DPW, all the vendors, especially the 10 breweries that participated, everyone who came to support the event, including the gentleman from Ramsey that I spoke to, and most importantly, our volunteer firefighters, families, and friends that staff the beer stations. We look forward to next year's event already. And that's it.
Excellent, thank you. That brings us to our first public comment session. Anyone that's here in public would like to make a comment, please feel free to approach the microphone, identify yourself and where you're from.
Marcia Caros, 51 Elwood Avenue, Flemington. In light of the bond vote last 2 weeks ago, I was on the municipal website this morning looking for the annual financial statement and annual debt statement. They're up for decades, but not this year's. So I don't know why they're not up this year. Maybe that's Sally just forgot her excitement and retired, or Bill. But we had them up for years and years and years, so rather than operating them, Michael, perhaps you can just get them up. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll make sure those get up. I'm sure it was just an oversight through the handing over the process. Any other comments? Anybody who's online who would like to make a comment, you can raise your hand. Seeing none, we'll move on. We do have a presentation this evening from Cardinal Capital. management, and so they were here in March. And then it was March, right, that they were here?
Yes,
And-
actually, I think the first agreement we had is the end of February, it's
End of
February 28th.
Okay, thank you. So they were designated as redeveloper of the Nilkamp property. You may know that as Guitar Boy property, where the Guitar Boy mural is at. The original plan they had coming in had a bit more retail involved in there. We were kind of looking towards putting a grocery store in there. Unfortunately, the recent changes from the DEP regarding floodplain levels kind of made that project undergo some serious changes. So they are here to present their new concept plan for this property. They are here. And then council will be asked to restate the redevelopment designation to move forward on that. As that happens, we're also working on amending the redevelopment plan for that area. Some of you may recall, we had an amended redevelopment plan for the north side, the Global Ag property. And that's done, that's been through the planning board and all that. We're working on the redevelopment agreement on that as we speak, and then we'll be moving on to the pilot. And so we're just waiting for the stuff to come back from Beacon. This project will be going through that same process with the financial study and all that as well. However, Cardinal has their entire team here, and Paul, I'm going to ask you to kind of take the lead on this to introduce your team and what you guys are all about. Eric Schwenker is here. He's the principal from Cardinal Capital Management as well. They're all here online, virtual. So I'm handing it over to you guys. Mike has the presentation and we'll go through. And Paul, is there anybody else here who I should be promoting that we're missing?
No, I think we have everybody on.
Okay, great.
So good evening, and Mayor, thank you so much for having us this evening. My name is Paul Boudreau. I'm part of the Cardinal Capital team on the project, and I'd like to introduce team members who joined me tonight. First, we have Eric Schwenker, who's the president of Cardinal, and Chris Geiger, who's vice president of assets, and you'll hear from Eric in a couple of minutes. Our attorney, Frank Vitolo of Sills Cummis, our architect, Nancy Doherty, who's the principal of Studio 1200, and Len Savino, who's our principal at Langen, who's our engineering partner. Eric is going to review a couple of slides with you to tell you a little bit about the company. And we have a slide we prepared that details some of the work we've done over the last couple of years. And as we all know, it's been fits and starts with COVID, but Cardinal and Eric and the mayor's team have hung in there. And we're so happy to be with you here tonight. What I can say about Eric is that he never flinched in the last couple of years as we were going through COVID and going through a number of issues that came up relative to the site that we had to get resolved. So we're happy to be here. And despite all of the things that have happened in the last couple of years, I know that Eric remains committed to working with you as partners in the borough. And so we look forward to the discussion tonight. All of our team members are available to answer any questions you have. And so at this point, Eric, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Paul. I have to make sure I know if somebody's going to do that first slide for me, I guess. There you go. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Cardinal Capital Management, a little bit about myself, and then give it over to our architect and the folks that who really are the most knowledgeable. Cardinal has been around more than 20 years. And I've been around more than 50 years, I think, doing real estate of one kind or another. In the 20 years of Cardinal, our focus, particularly at the beginning, was on special needs housing. We've done about 25 projects in Wisconsin, Colorado, and Arizona that I think many of them are fairly unique. We build for the deaf, deafblind, hard of hearing, building for blind and visually impaired, building for vets, building for people recovering from mental illness, building for homeless, building for kids coming out of foster care. And in each of those, not just building, but financing, managing, and in many cases, providing the services. We have deaf employees, veterans employees, all those kinds of things. The one that we are always most like to talk about is Apache Asl Trails, which is in Tempe, Arizona on the light rail. That's in the upper left-hand corner. And that is really, the ASL is American Sign Language. So this is built housing and dedicated to meeting the needs of people whose primary language is American Sign Language. Won the Edson Award, which is the major award in our business for disability housing. Been around, just celebrated its 10th anniversary. 75 folks live there. We started about 5 years ago, really focused, also doing a lot of workforce housing and market rate housing of all kinds. No news to any of you that there's a deficit of this type of housing in almost every place in America. A lot of that, the outcome of 9 or 10 years of really an inability broadly to build this kind of housing following the recession of the difficulties of 2008, 2009. So you see some of our projects here, they are all in Wisconsin, these particular projects. Danbury Falls has a nice little river behind it and good in a small town in Wisconsin, but works very well up by many of our famous golf courses in Pasadena and Wauwatosa. Right, a neighborhood place, the whole single family neighborhood fits in well. And Porter's in Racine is a mass timber building. So timber ceilings and so forth, a unique kind of design that's being, that Wisconsin's taking the lead in. We're using the same builder, architect that's responsible for something called the Ascentus in Milwaukee, which is a 25-story mass timber building. And this also, in terms of an urban area, does come with a grocery store and everything, and meant to be the centerpiece for bringing back Racine, Wisconsin, which is about 15 miles from Milwaukee. So we do a bunch of those projects. About half of them are in Wisconsin. The one that we're most involved with now is 263 units, which we're just filling out and doing a market hall, an 18,000 square foot market hall, 12,000 feet of commercial space on 8 acres in Middleton, which is about 5 miles from the state capitol in Madison. But we also work in other states and made a point of that, sometimes following some of the social service projects we do. Our emphasis, other than Arizona and Colorado, has been Texas, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, and New Jersey. My interest in New Jersey comes from the fact that I was born here and in New Jersey. I grew up in Belmead, which is only about 15 miles from you all here. And my dad was once the mayor of Montgomery Township. So I have some sense of what that's all about, and family here in Hopewell and Princeton and the like. So there's always good reasons to be back. Feel very good about the state. Like this site, we've done historic tax credit type housing. This is not what this is, but we have a feel for it. We did something, we did our largest skyscraper in Milwaukee from the 1890s anyway. It was a building called Germania. And we did that and turned that into 110 apartments about 6-7 years ago. So with that, a fair amount of experience, used to working, hopefully carefully with communities, recognizing that there's a lot of things that have to be done in order to come up with something that works for the most possible, greatest number of people that we can. And also trying to make it work financially. As Paul said, very difficult times the last 3 or 4 years for everybody. Difficult times now just in putting the financing together. But of course, for most of it in the past, it's been the health issues and the supply issues and so forth. But we're geared to see this through. And we really look forward to working with everybody here.
And Eric, Cardinal Capital doesn't build and flip, right? They build and hold and operate.
Absolutely. It's a big thing. It's like the first thing we say to a bank or an investor or anybody else, and it does affect how you finance. But, you know, for our folks, I mean, the best thing I can do for our folks is the couple hundred folks that more or less work, is to give them a good future. And you don't have that future if you're building and flipping. That's a whole different lifestyle. You have it by staying in the community, holding on, doing a good job, and then finding the next thing to do. And so what we would be trying to do here is not only to hold on, but to ultimately do around 500-600 units somewhere, you know, within 50 miles. So we create jobs and lots of backup and everything else. And that's a place to be. So that's our goal.
Ready for the next slide?
Next slide, Nancy. Eric, this is one that we just wanted to put down some things that we've actually been doing in the borough for the last couple of years. You want to go through this or you want me to?
Why don't you, Paul? I think I've already heard me too much, probably.
Well, obviously, we secured a contract with Nilkanth to purchase the property at 4042 North Main Street. Early on, we retained Whitestone, an engineering company, to complete an environmental assessment of the property. We worked with the seller to resolve 2 Conrail easements on the property that really would have prohibited any kind of development there if we hadn't got those easements resolved. We assembled a team of New Jersey professionals that I introduced to you a couple of minutes ago. So all of our team are New Jersey professionals who work in New Jersey every day and have a tremendous experience. We funded an escrow account with the borough to continue to help fund your outside legal team and others. And we did a analysis of the condition of the depot building that's on the site. So Cardinal has put a lot of effort and resources into the site already. And we're happy tonight to be able to show you another concept plan going forward. Okay, Nancy, it's yours.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Nancy Doherty from Studio 1200, and we're very excited to be here tonight with the Cardinal team. As you all know, you're very familiar with the site. We're at the corner of North Main Street and Park Avenue. And our first step was really looking at the site to see what was there, what the existing conditions are, and then sort of what the surrounding neighborhood is. So one of the interesting things is there's about a 12-foot slope between one end, the north to the south end of the site. We know there's some existing structures on there. Surrounding the site, there's a variety of different building types, different housing types. And so those were all the things that we were looking at as we started the process. And as the mayor mentioned, the original proposal concept that I think was shared with you, we had different elevation information about where we could start sort of constructing on the site. So what we're going to show you tonight is that any of the construction starts at sort of where you see grade in the middle picture, picture number 6 down at the bottom, which is at about 147 feet. So that's how we started the process. I think you can go to the next slide.
Headphones?
Nope. So, you know, the first thing we did was we really looked at what is this site all about. And so as everybody knows, you know, it's prominently at the north end of town. And we have this intersection of the intersection of North Main Street and Park Avenue. And we also have this opportunity as a gateway. And the initial redevelopment plan, when it was the initial Agway site, talked about this gateway and how important this north end of the site is. So if you look at the diagram on the right-hand side of this slide, we started to think about, in conjunction with Cardinal and discussions with the mayor and her team, about what would be on the site. So what you're going to see tonight is there's a combination of apartments, which are sort of flank the north and west sides of the site, and then townhouses on the east side of the site that relate to Main Street, North Main Street, and then also really looking at, it says community, but really retail, potential commercial space.
When I got to work, I see
Virginia
Virginia wasn't there.
Hey, Bill, somebody, it sounds, hang on one second, Bill Hance, could you mute?
I think he's set. Okay, and then in the middle of the park, I mean, in the middle of the site, really grounding it is a park, you know, a park space that becomes sort of the center of this site and an amenity for the community. So kind of our vision statement that we created was a vibrant community gateway that connects people to each other, celebrates the history of the site, and extends Flemington downtown. So really looking at all of those things as we dove into what the possibilities were. So here's our site diagram. And sort of starting on the north end of the site, you'll see it says North Building. And so this would be the building that faces the Captiva development out at the northern end, the intersection. As you swing around counterclockwise, we have this, what we're calling the south building. So the north and south buildings have apartments in them. We have a total of 100 rental apartments in those two buildings. And then as you come all the way around past the florist structure that faces Main Street, we have 11 townhouses. And as you see, they're all anchored by a park space. One of the goals of the original redevelopment plan, which we've maintained, is having access through the site and into the park space from Park Avenue and also North Main Street. All of the parking is underneath the park and the structures. We have a total of 200 plus parking spaces. So just walking you through this, this is a site section. We did 2 site sections. So this is starting on the east side going west. So sort of from left to right, those you see it says historic house, existing house, excuse me. So those are some of the old houses that are up on sort of a little bit of a hill. We have North Main Street, then we have the townhouses. So the townhouses are 2 levels of living with 2-car garages underneath them. In the middle, you see it says park. So the park is above underground parking. So there's a parking all the way through the site underground, and then the park is on top of that. The south building you see next to that on the right has 2 levels of parking in some areas, and then it has 3 floors of apartments above that. And then as you continue off the site to the right, you see Park Avenue, whoops, and then the existing houses, and that's the egg building beyond there. So again, just to give you a sense of scale. If you go to the next slide, so this is the north-south section. So starting on the left, you see the Captiva development, and then the intersection of Park Avenue and North Main Street, what we're calling the North Building. So you have 2 levels of apartments above community/retail space, amenity space, and then again, underground parking. You see the park with the townhouses in the distance. And then on the right-hand side, you see the south building, and then beyond that, the greenhouses and the existing house that face Main Street. So we can go to the next one. So this is an elevation along Park Avenue. And so again, starting on the left-hand side here, it shows what we're calling the North Building. And so combination of materials that we're proposing, a gray brick. So anything you see in gray, we're imagining is gray brick. All of the materials were selected to sort of complement, or the idea about materials to complement the Captiva development, which many of you know is a combination of red brick and sort of gray panels. So we're proposing sort of a palette of gray with sort of neutral colored stucco, and then wood panels in combination with that. And then you'll also see here, you see some stepping. Those are intended to be terraces at some of the apartments as you sort of traverse along Park Avenue. Down on the, I know it's at a small scale here, but down on the ground level, that's where the parking structure is. So the idea is that the parking structure, which there's 2 levels of parking, on the ground level, it could have historic maps of the town, which are on screens. And then on the second level, wood slats or other materials like that. Down at the bottom of this slide, you see image 1 just shows sort of screening treatment for parking. Image number 2 is actually one of the historic maps of Flemington and the surrounding area. Image 3 just shows you how you can get maps or images onto screening that can cover parking structures. And then image 4 is actually showing in the elevation where we go from Park Avenue up into the park. This is what we're imagining is there's sort of a beautiful wide stairs that take you up into the park that are accessible to the public. There will be full accessibility from Park Avenue and also North Main Street. If we look at this, so this now is, if you're looking from the north, this is the view that you would see sort of at that gateway. So on the north end of this site, we are thinking about this would be retail space with some outdoor, terrace. And we're imagining some sort of garage doors or something that harken back to some of the industrial roots in Flemington. We've talked about putting signage on this face of the building that actually is signage for the town, not for the development. So would say, you know, Flemington. And you see throughout, we've got some terraces and some open spaces, and using this palette of, again, a gray brick, stucco, anything that's down on the ground would be some sort of concrete or stone material so that it's durable. And then with wood or wood-like slats in order to soften sort of the feel of the development. On the left-hand side of this image, you see as we're going up Main Street into the town, you can see just a glimpse of the townhouses there, which in the next images will show you more specifically. So this is the view on North Main Street. This is an elevation showing the townhouses. So on facing onto North Main Street, excuse me, there's a total of 6 townhouses, and then there's an additional 5 townhouses that would face onto the park. So they're all intended to be 2 stories of living with entrances and garages below that. They all have street access. The idea would be that they have, you know, steps and doors so that there's a really nice pedestrian feel to these townhouses as you come down from Main Street. We can go to the next. And then if you look at this view of the townhouses, a little bit of a bird's eye view, you can see they are 3 stories, including the garages, and each one of them have a terrace space on the top floor, so individual terraces. So we try to incorporate, you know, communal outdoor space and then also some outdoor space for some of these units. And if you see on the right-hand side here, this shows you sort of access past the townhouses up to the park. On the other side, there would be handicap access into the park as well. And that sort of is a summary of it, a very sort of quick summary of it. So again, we have a total of 100 apartments, 11 townhouses, and then the public park space that is all above the parking, so accessible from North Main and from Park Avenue. Down on the lower level, we have about 4,000 square feet, which you can see right in this view of ground floor space with the outdoor terrace. And then up on the upper level of that, right below where it says Flemington, there would be an additional 5,600 square feet of space, which could be building amenity space, which will be needed, and other kinds of spaces that have access to the park. And as I said, we have a total of 200 parking spaces accounted for now, so plenty of parking, so everything can be parked on site. And some of the benefits to the community, you know, as we work through this, we're taking this defunct property, and I think it would become a really vibrant part of the downtown. You know, creating this gateway project to welcome people into Flemington for the town and also to the development itself. Creating this public open space, it would have where we have all imagined that it has a playground and it has other kinds of amenities to the community, which could be, there are lots of opportunities for that. And then again, some sort of retail community focused space adjacent to the park and providing, and then the last thing is being able to provide not only the rental apartments, but the rental townhouses, which is a new sort of residential type in Flemington. And that, you know, I think is part of the master plan to continue to provide new types of housing in town. So that's the very quick summary of where we are at the moment.
Got it. Can we talk ever so briefly about the depot? I know you've done the, you had a structural engineer look at that depot. It's in very bad shape.
Right.
However, Eric, I know we've discussed with Paul that if somebody was interested, that you would basically work with them to allow them to move that depot to another location. Is that correct? Despite its bad shape. I mean, there's been fires inside of it. Paul, do you want to address that?
Yeah, I think from the beginning of our conversation with you, Eric offered to, you know, help if there was a opportunity to move that building somewhere else in the borough. And then I know you, Mayor, have spoken to some people about their interest in that. We did an analysis with a company of the building. They went in and there have been a number of fires that were set over the years in the building. the building requires tremendous shoring up, if I can use that term, before you could ever move it. There are a number of other issues. Obviously, as you look at the building today, there are holes in the roof and so on and so forth. There are lots of rotting floorboards and so on. And so the building is really in really bad shape. And, you know, for someone to tackle in the first instance, just the thought of moving it, there needs to be a tremendous amount of work done, according to the engineers that gave us their report.
Yeah, we'll put that out there on the record that if somebody pops up and they're interested in moving it, and then they can discuss that with you, and you can set a timeline on that as well.
That's correct.
Yeah. So there's a couple of photos from the inside of that building that you can see where the fires have taken place. And I don't know when those fires were. I don't think they've been as my time in Flemington. But I do appreciate you guys taking on that expense to have that building properly examined as well. Are there any questions from council?
Does this change any of the affordable housing units?
So our affordable housing agreement would be 15% of rentals, and that will be addressed in the eventual redevelopment agreement. A minimum of 15%.
Is that for both apartments and townhouses? Is that total, or is that just for, how does that work?
Andy wanted, let me recognize Andy Brewer. He is our special counsel for redevelopment.
Good evening, everybody. Later some, maybe not so much others. Andy Brewer from Mary City Falcon Development Council. Affordable housing is the obligation that would be imposed upon Flemington, which is the task council, the redeveloper, is really a function of the settlement agreement we have in place. Beth McManus is your consultant, and all different types of housing have slightly different requirements, but the overall provision that will be in the redevelopment agreement will be whatever the settlement with fair share and the court giving you immunity that establishes your affordable housing obligation, that will be passed on. So, you know, with apartments, you can have credits for, you know, if they're disabled or if there are very low or, you know, different housing, different bedroom counts. So it's hard to say, it's not 15% every type of housing. It is whatever is part of that fair share, which is generally 15%.
Any other questions?
The parking underneath the structure under the park. Obviously not an engineer. Can somebody explain like that? How does that work? I'm just curious personally. As far as like you have grass and trees, and underneath, I assume concrete, and then parking.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a structural, so Len Savino could also weigh in, the civil engineer, but we have, it's basically a structural slab, if you will, right, system for the parking, and then the park goes on top of that. So wherever we have grass or park on top of that, it's sitting on top of that structural system.
Okay, and as far as the townhouse, this is an interesting proposal here for rental units. So how does that break down, or is that something that we wait down the line for? You know, say like half would be rent, half to own. Is it premature for that discussion yet?
It probably is. I mean, basically, we start off with the notion that we're renting, and I think it's important we start off that way in terms of the financing, because when we're starting out, to treat it all as a whole makes it a little bit easier to pull the financing together. Where it ends up 5-10 years from now will just again partly depend on how that comes together. We I think you'll find that it will be attractive on a rental basis to a lot of people. And that will probably be one of the first, that'll probably be the quickest part of everything to rent. That would be my experience. Because it can be a very suitable answer for a lot of people. So, we're always learning from where the markets go and so forth. And at the beginning, it'll be trying to make sure that we come up with something that is consistent as a rental, because that'll make it much easier on the financing to get started.
Thank you.
There's no concern about flooding in that area.
I think that one of the reasons that it took, I don't mean to speak to them, is that why it took 6 months and they have a revised plan because of some of the water issues. I'll let them speak to that.
Yeah, I can speak to that. This is Len Savino from Langen. How are you all? So initially, we put in an OPA request for the flood hazard area permit that was obtained when Park Avenue Extension was constructed and the large culvert for stormwater was put in there along with some other utilities. That data yielded some pretty good results. We were pretty happy with what we read in the report from the DEP at that time, which was like 2008 or 6 to 8, somewhere in that area. As it turned out, however, well, let me just back up. The statement made in that review by the engineer from DEP said that the stormwater is contained in the box culvert constructed by the municipality. So I thought all good, thumbs up. We don't have to worry about a floodplain, and we'll work forward from that point. However, shortly thereafter, the governor had issued his emergency stormwater requirements for us to take it up a few notches, if you will, and for fluvial floodplains, which this is, it's not a tidal, it's a fluvial. That means it's inland and not impacted by the tide, any tide, that we have to now evaluate this for a storm event that would potentially occur in the year 2100. So they have established what that means, and because of the intensity of storms over the last few years, he issued that, and it's requiring us now to take a step back. So tomorrow morning, it took a while to get to this point, but we have a pre-application meeting with the DEP. We will be having this discussion with them in detail, coming away with clear directions so that we can understand where we really stand. So yes, the site essentially was brought up so that parking would be at existing grade, and from there, everything goes up. Previous to that, part of the parking, actually a good portion of the parking, was below grade, one level, not everywhere, but generally. And Nancy and team jumped into action and actually created what you see here, which is a pretty amazing plan with nothing below existing grade. And that would be the criteria to start with. And then from there, we'd have to figure out what the floodplain elevation is. So subsequent to that discussion, Jerry Harris had directed me to Burton Engineering, and I spoke to Eric Howe, I think his name is pronounced, regarding the Captiva project. He indicated that he is doing a flood study to see if they can relocate the culvert on their property, and we may be able to piggyback that with some of the study information, because doing a study like this is very time consuming. In fact, it's going to take them a bit of time to do this. They are now in the process of surveying. You have to do 500 feet downstream of the open culvert, which is the stream part, and 500 feet upstream, and they were still working through that. So in my discussion with him, he said it's just starting. It helps us because we can perhaps piggyback a little bit on what they're doing. But I'm hoping that tomorrow on the call, you might be able to navigate through this in a different way and not have to go through this long process. But potentially we're going to have to get a new flood hazard area permit where we thought perhaps we were not going to have to. So that's kind of a long explanation answer to that question, but that's where we stand. Hopefully tomorrow will be maybe better news.
Liz or Jess, do you have any questions?
Sorry, I do not.
No questions here either.
Are there any questions from the public? Any questions from the public online? Raise your hand by clicking the raise hand icon. Hearing none. we will wrap up that part. What I would like to do now, is we'll do the minutes approval. I would like to amend the agenda to take resolution 2022-190 to authorize the execution of a second conditional designation and interim cost agreement with Cardinal. It's the last item on the agenda. And move that up before the consent agenda. So if we could have a motion to move that up, and the purpose of moving that up is to let Andy leave and set free the folks from Cardinal Capital as well. You're of course welcome to stay for the entire meeting, but I think having to do this each and every evening. So could we have a motion to change the agenda to move up resolution 2022-190 to the next item after we approve the minutes?
Tilly will move.
Almost second.
Okay, Ms. Hand,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Barker,
Yes.
Ms. Rosetti,
Yes.
Ms. Tilly.
Yes.
So stick around for one moment. Could we have a motion to approve the minutes of the August 8th, 2022 regular council meeting?
Tilly will move.
Ms. Hand,
Abstain.
Mr. Johnston,
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Rosetti,
Yes.
Ms. Tilly.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Could we have a motion to adopt resolution 2022-190 to authorize the execution of a second conditional designation and interim cost agreement with Cardinal Capital Management LLC pursuant to the local redevelopment and housing law?
Tilly will move.
Almost second.
Andy, would you please join us and just give us the Cliff Notes version as to what council is voting on?
Sure, thank you. Good to see you again. Really, what is this? Is a 6-month period to negotiate a redevelopment agreement. You know, back in February, end of February, you did this once before. This agreement is almost identical. So it's just a few acknowledgements of those environmental changes. The escrow is still there, so we're not funding a new escrow. But essentially, it gives them the exclusive right to negotiate with you, so they know that you're not out negotiating with anybody else for this piece of property. And from you, you have a qualified developer who's done some things, you know that they are known to pay the cost for the engineers, the architects, for me, for everybody to look at it. So all the professionals in the municipality paid for while we work on getting Beth McManus, the planner, while we get a redevelopment agreement. Hopefully. So it's a 6-month negotiating period that you're agreeing to. That's really what this is.
Are there any questions or discussion from council? Hearing none, Michael, go ahead and call the vote.
Ms. Hand,
Yes.
Mr. Johnston,
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Rosetti,
Yes.
Ms. Tilly.
Yes.
It's passed.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody from the Cardinal team. I look forward to working with you coming up. Probably again this week, we'll be talking as we move this process along. And thank you for the presentation. It's a great project. I'm looking forward to seeing it come to fruition, even if it doesn't have a grocery store.
Thank you all, everyone.
Thank you, Mayor.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good to see you all.
Andy, thanks for coming. Nice to see you. Give my best to your family. And
Thank you very much.
colleagues.
Take care, Andy.
Thank you.
So next up on the agenda, and all the Cardinal folks, if you want to drop off, you can go ahead and drop off. Thank you. Next up is the consent agenda. If we could have a motion to approve the consent agenda, unless there's anything anyone wants to pull up.
Tilly will move.
Almost second.
Ms. Hand,
Yes.
Mr. Johnston,
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Rosetti,
Yes.
Ms. Tilly.
Yes.
Passed.
Excellent, thank you. That brings us to our regular agenda. First item on there is a first reading ordinance 2022-13. This is establishing business insurance registration. If we could have a motion,
Tilly will move.
Well, second.
Ms. Hand?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Can you just give us the Cliff Notes version as to what this is and why we're doing it, and it's a state statute? Do you want to?
Yeah, it's,
what-
again, it's just a state statute that came out that is requiring a minimum insurance amount for certain businesses. And it is requiring that to be enforced by the municipalities. We don't think it's going to be a huge clerical undertaking for the borough, so we're trying to just get a small administrative fee. $15 we settled on, and we'll start, Mr. Humphrey will start doing outreach to the businesses to let them know that they should register by December 1st of this year, and that will be good for 2023, and that will put the borough in compliance with the new requirements.
Excellent, thank you. And that's businesses and people who own rental properties.
Yes, so
correct?
rental properties are considered businesses under this act. There's
Yeah. Especially business liability insurance, so it's mainly physical businesses and landlords.
And you'll see in the probably at the next meeting, there were several requirements put out by the state that require certain businesses to hold certain things and registrations, et cetera, and it puts it on the municipalities to actually find out and enforce it. So you'll be seeing new lead paint inspection registration requirements coming up in September. So there were a whole host of things that the state put out that is really putting it on the municipalities to enforce the regulations.
But this particular insurance is just for liability.
Right. It's just a minimum insurance
You know
liability.
what the minimum is?
It rated each ordinance.
I think it was 300,000.
I have too many windows open.
That's for landlords as well.
It defines businesses as including landlords.
It's no less
If
than
it's an
500,000.
online business, it's excluded, or
I'm sorry,
if it's an online business.
500,000.
500,000, yeah, that is taken directly from, I didn't reinvent the wheel when drafting this, I took most of what's in the ordinance, language directly from the statute.
It's kind of like a rider insurance.
Yeah.
So it's-
Yeah. And you'll see the state just updated the car insurance requirements, they've been going through all of these types of things and updating amounts, yes, so.
Any other questions, comments? Call the vote to move it on the first reading.
Ms. Hand?
Yeah.
Mr. Johnston?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Rosetti?
Yes.
Ms. Tilly?
Yes,
Will be for the second meeting of September.
Second meeting or first meeting?
We're gonna, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, first meeting.
Usually we just go 2 weeks. And that is, I know, I don't have the calendar, I know there's
So it'll be
some,
the 12th, September 12th.
well, yeah, but I know we have the Jewish holidays coming up as well. Is that later in the month?
The fall order in the month.
That's later in the month. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I thought it was good. Misspeak.
That's what it's on, so.
Okay, so the public hearing will be on September 12th on that one. Next up is also a first reading. Ordinance 2022-14, first reading, amending chapter 7, traffic schedule 12, parking restricted for use by handicapped persons on adding a spot on Kapner Street. If we could have a motion.
Tilly will move.
Long second.
Basically, what this is we have a new resident on Kapner Street who requires a ADA spot. Thankfully, she's at work during the day. It was explained to her that during the day, that spot will fill up most likely by somebody going to the courthouse, and we cannot reserve spots for specific people. She was okay with that. She understands that, but so that she hopefully has a spot to park when she comes home to that is accessible due to her needs. And that's kind of how we do many of these spots that end up around town as well, and it is an ordinance. Any questions or comments? Do I call the vote?
Ms. Hand,
Yes.
Mr. Johnston,
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes, absolutely.
Ms. Rosetti,
Yes.
Ms. Tilly.
Yes.
That will also have a public hearing on September 12th. Next up is resolution 2022-186, certifying that all members of the governing body of the Flemington Borough, Huntington County have reviewed at a minimum the sections of the 2021 annual audit entitled general comments and recommendations. We could have a motion.
Tilly will move.
Long second.
There any discussion? Bill, I'm gonna be asking you to unmute here for the next item because we do have a corrective action on this. We did have one ding on the audit this year. It had to do with the software issue, as Bill will explain in a moment. Which will be the corrective action plan. So if you would call the vote on 186.
Ms. Hand,
Yes.
Mr. Johnston,
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Rosetti,
Yes.
Ms. Tilly.
Yes.
Passed.
Next up is, Jess and Liz, you must come in and sign the papers acknowledging this at Borough Hall. Mr. Humphrey will have it in his office. Next up is resolution 2022-187. This is corrective action plan for the audit for year 2022. We could have a motion.
Tilly will move.
Long second.
So Bill, can you explain what this is?
Yes, Mayor. Basically, the utility clerk had some issues with the bank account last year where there was a problem with the software that it was double counting some payments and she was having trouble reconciling. But everything has been, as of February, corrected. And, the auditors just wanted to put it in there just, because they did, it was, I think, about $10,000 that was off from what she was showing. But like I said, everything has been corrected. Everybody's accounts are correct. And we're good up to this point. So we should be good going forward.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Go ahead and call the vote.
Ms. Hand,
Yes.
Mr. Johnston,
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Rosetti,
Yes.
Ms. Tilly.
Yes.
Passed.
Okay, thank you. Next up is resolution 2022-188, opposition to the proposed increases in the state health benefits program. Could I have a motion?
Tilly will move.
Long second.
Mr. Humphrey?
Gotta give it to them.
Yeah, so the state commission for insurance is hearing reports right now that could raise the rates for the public employees' health insurance by as much as 24%. So to give you an idea, we're talking about each year at minimum $100 to $150,000 increase to the borough of Flemington each year. So the League of Municipalities is recommending that everybody, all municipalities, let the state know that this is unacceptable.
Any questions, comments?
I don't know if anyone knows this, but can somebody tell me what's the justification for?
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same thing for the 24%. Did you say 24%?
As much as 24%. They're predicting between 12 and 20% will be the sweet spot. And yeah, you're still seeing, so they're talking about COVID expenses, inflation, other expenses. The insurance companies are mad that they lost money during COVID.
That's just so interesting. I mean, I work with a major corporation and I've not heard this before. I mean, they're not raising our rates. I'm just wondering why they would raise the state's rates. It's just such a little bit bizarre.
Because they can.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's open.
Yeah.
Wow, I just.
Any comments, questions? Go ahead and call the vote.
Ms. Hand,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Rosetti,
Yes.
Ms. Tilly.
Yes.
Ready? Next up is resolution 2022-189, authorization for payment of sick and vacation time to former borough clerk Sally Graziano, who is riding her happy trails. If we could have a motion.
Tilly will move.
Handle
Well-
second.
So the breakdown of this, here's payout. The total is $4,847.10. 34 vacation hours, 61 vacation hours for 2022, that's prorated. And the 34 was still left over from 2021. 56 6-hour carryover from 2021 and also prorated for 2022 for a total of 151 hours. Comes out to a total of $4,847.10. Any other comments? Go ahead and call the vote.
Ms. Hand,
Yes.
Mr. Johnston,
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Rosetti,
Yes.
Ms. Tilly.
Yes.
That brings us to our second public comment session. If anybody in the public would like to make a comment, I'm on the microphone. Please identify yourself before you comment.
Marcia Carey, so I know what I forgot, so this is the first time. So, regarding the Hiram Deeds papers that you received, Mayor. Hiram Deeds was the founder of the County Historical Society, and they have a very large collection of his items. John Poole, who is on their board and retired from Cultural and Heritage Commission. Not to say he's an expert, but he probably knows more about Hiram Deeds like than anybody else does, because he's done a lot of research on it and a lot of things. So if you don't have a happy home for them, I am sure the County Historical Society on the degree would be happy to take them.
Yeah, no, thank you. You were on my list. Many of them are also the Fleming House. I have them on to talk to those folks as well about it. Any other comments or questions? Anyone from online who has a comment or a question, you could raise your hand. Hey, Robin Lapidus. Robin, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor Driver. I just wanted to say really quickly, and I wasn't sure if Jeremy Long mentioned this, but those 15 grants to the residents of the South End for materials and storefront improvements are for $1,000 each. That's all I wanted to communicate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll move on. Do we have an attorney's report?
Jen, for one of the meetings in September, we're hopeful for the first meeting. Mr. Humphrey and I are gonna put together the lead paint inspection ordinance that is now mandated by the state. We're just trying to, Mr. Humphrey is trying to figure out logistics of how the borough would offer the service, what we would have to charge for it, et cetera, because before we put an ordinance into place, I'm sure everyone's first question is going to be, what is this going to cost the borough, and what is this going to cost the owners of these rental properties that are going to have to pay for, if not all, at least a portion of these costs. So we will put that together. Additionally, I'm hopeful for the first meeting in September, but most likely the second meeting, we will have some items from the Union Hotel project, because they have an amended redevelopment plan that is going through that, so we'll just have to amend the redevelopment agreement to reflect that. And then they have a couple of engineering things that they're working with the engineering team on, a mid-block crossing. They have to eliminate a few parking spaces to accommodate a driveway, and those will have to be done by ordinance, but we need engineered plans approved by the planning board engineer as well as the borough engineer. They're working together to get all of that sorted out. So I was hoping we'd be able to do it tonight. Just, it's not all together in time. I would love to say the first meeting in September, but I'm going to conservatively say the second meeting in September, you'll start to see that stuff
Okay.
on the agenda. I'd like to do everything at once because I think it's, with the revised plan, I think it's important to look at these changes, these public improvements that are gonna go in, to look at them all together.
The revised plan is the addition of the veranda. For the 78 Main Street building. Do we have to do a new redevelopment plan? I don't think we do.
I don't think, because I
I'll
think
talk
it was
to-
in the
I'll talk to
redevelopment,
Andy.
plan, it changes under the concept plan that is attached to the redevelopers agreement, so we have to amend the redevelopers agreement to
Agreement, okay.
reflect the new concept plan.
Got
But the permission to put the veranda on there was in the original redevelopers, redevelopment plan, they just did not
Got it.
do it the
Yeah,
first
no.
time, and now they've decided to do it.
Okay, no, that works. And it actually has to do with the elevation of the building and the different elevation between the hotel and 78 Main. It's very complicated. But
I think
I'm not an
everyone has
engineer.
learned what to see a concept plan for a redevelopment area. It's not going to be the first one you're going to see.
So, okay, that's it. Could we have a motion to pay some bills?
Killian move.
You guys can move this stuff. Your ear is all around.
It's to audit the bills. We have to pay the bills. It's really a motion to audit the bills.
Ms. Han,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Long,
Yes.
Mr. Parker,
Yes.
Ms. Rosetti,
Yes.
Ms. Tilly.
Yes.
Passed.
Okay. Do we have any reason to go into executive session? Hearing none. We have a motion to adjourn.
Well, now you're. I'll take it.
You do a voice vote. on it.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Yes.
Hi.
Molly,
Yes.
do you have contact number for Kelly over at the Samuel Fleming's house?
Hang on, hang on, hang on.